Hi, everyone. This is Cody with the 307 podcast, and I just wanted to say thanks to all of our awesome patrons. If you like our show and want to support us, you can find us at www.patreon.com/The Forge Herald. Thanks, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 307 RPG podcast. My name is Patrick, and I'm your host, and I'm joined, as always, by my two co-hosts.
I'm Cody.
And I'm Nolan.
All right, so we got a few things to talk about. We'll start with some news, and then we're going to go into a deep dive into the monk class as we've been doing, and then we'll talk a little bit about the monk character that I'm rolling up, as well as some of Nolan's character that he's working on. And that'll be it for this holiday weekend. If you celebrate it, happy Easter to everybody. If you don't celebrate it, hey, it's Sunday. Have a great Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive straight into news. Nolan, you said something about WizKids?
It looked like WizKids is releasing a 3-Dragon Anti-Legendary Edition in July. Apparently, it's an upgraded version of the original 2005 card game, an actual card game that could be played standalone. About a 100-card set, more or less kind of the poker game, I guess, of what they consider it in DnD, and your characters can have the skills in it. Don't know if there's more to come. I know they've done a dragon chess in the past that was pretty complex, but hopefully some more things are coming out that you could either add to the game or role play, or if you have characters in game that want to learn how to play it or whatever, it'd be kind of a fun thing to add to your story. So
That you mentioned the dragon chess set, and I think while we were just talking, you said something about needing a PhD to play it or some shit.
it is, I guess, a really complicated chess game.
No kidding.
But I had never seen it. Just seeing some of this stuff on, like, wow, you actually learned to play that game? Like, just looking at the rule book almost made me fall asleep. So
Oh, wow.
So hopefully they'll come out with a little bit more streamlined things. But there is a lot of crafts and games and stuff like that are either dice-based or card-based. So having an official rule, and it's got kind of a picture of the card box and stuff like that. It'll be a 3-Dragon Ante.
That's neat.
A fun element that you could bring into a game if you
absolutely.
wanted to.
You could actually have a little bar scene, like you're at the bar and you're playing this game, and you can break out the game and actually play it in-game. A game within a game. There you go. Speaking of games, I do know that the Dungeon of the Mad Mage board game is either releasing soon or is out. If you're a fan of the D&D board games, and I've got a couple. I have Castle Ravenloft as well as The Legend of Drizzt. I know they've done one for pretty much every storyline now.
Great way to get miniatures, too, if you're a miniature person.
Yep, if you're a miniature person, they usually have a fair amount of miniatures in those games. And
they're usually the ones that they do for that set. So they're just unpainted instead of the ones that are pre-painted.
So it is although they're not the Nolzers, they're not as thick, not as heavier quality. But still, they're miniatures nonetheless, and if you are into that sort of thing, it is an easy way to get those. Cody, what's going on over in Kickstarter?
Kickstarter. Well, of course, we got 3 days left on the Broadsword Magazine Kickstarter, our last hype for the Broadsword Kickstarter. In case you haven't caught one of our other episodes, Broadsword Magazine is going to be a 5th edition magazine based in the theory of the old Dragon Plus magazines, things like that. It's going to have one-shot dungeons, new subclasses that they come up with, stat blocks for bestiary, all sorts of fun stuff in it, as well as just a great way to network a lot of cool people doing stuff with role-playing, which you will see if you get the first episode or first magazine. You'll see one of our ads in there. As far as other things, I did mention in pre-notes that Critical Core is still rolling, so if you have any interest in gaming into therapy or things like that, that's a really cool one to check out. That's Critical Core. But the new one on the beat today for me is a one by Nord Games. It is their 5th edition Ultimate Bestiary, The Dreaded Accursed, for 5th edition. And it is a giant book with over 130 monsters in it. And it is a focus on the good old undead and accursed monsters, ghosts, ghouls, liches, lycanthropes. It details their origins, environments, and attitudes, and then it also has a wide variety of stat blocks to suit ranges of character levels for all things. So if you want to throw some There's probably some zombie or ghoul things that are very high CR rated. So if you want to throw that zombie in against your level 15 characters and you don't want them to just wade through them like they're not even there, there's probably something fun in that. And I do enjoy, I have seen a couple of things that Nord Game has done, and they are pretty amazingly in depth, and they usually turn out pretty well.
Nice. And of course, there is also the Contagion Chronicles of Darkness Kickstarter going on. They are in their last few days of that. If you are a fan of the World of Darkness and the Chronicles, of the World of Darkness gaming system, remember, it is not Vampire the Masquerade or Mage Ascension. It is the other versions of those games. This one is going to be kind of interesting, as it is going to have several storylines that you can use for your games, so like one-shots and things like that, that'll allow you to use more than just one type of supernatural creature in your party. So you can have mages working with vampires, working with werewolves and Prometheans and so on. So it is in their last couple of days. They are fully funded. I know they've been going through stretch goals pretty good, so it's something worth checking out. You mentioned 5th edition, Cody, with the Kickstarter of the Bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar at all with Scarred Lands?
No.
Scarred Lands is from Onyx Path Publishing, and this is a system that came out about 20 years ago, around 2000, under the, who was it? Sword and Sorcery Studios. And they were a D20 system, and they have Sword and Sorcery went away, and Onyx Path has revived the title, and they are making these. They're essentially 5th edition expansions that you can, or supplements that you can get. They're, of course, not official Wizards of the Coast stuff, but they are. It is a little bit more grittier setting for Dungeons and Dragons. They do have quite a bit of stuff on DriveThruRPG, Player's Guide, and so on, and you can get it for both 5th edition and Pathfinder. So if you want some extra fantasy that's not 100% D&D, maybe like a little bit more gritty side of it, that is a game you can check out.
There are beautiful 5th edition supplements that are not official that are out there. Mm-hmm. I know that they did the Kickstarter just recently for that. What was the Drow one? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, the Underdark one that you and I were looking at, Nolan.
Yeah, I can't remember the title of it, but
they do some very,
massive,
very beautiful and in-depth stuff.
It was one of the more popular 3.5 ones that they revised for, and it was like 600 some pages. I mean, it was just crazy in depth.
Mm-hmm.
Very well done.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of new releases, and Onyx Path in particular, for Mage the Ascension for Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary Edition, Gods and Monsters recently released. This is purchasable through DriveThruRPG. You can get either a PDF, premium, or standard edition of those books. Gods and Monsters is essentially exactly what it's saying. It is a book that allows you to incorporate deities, monsters, spirits, creatures, paradox entities, and avatars for your World of Darkness games. It is not just for Mage. There are stuff for vampires, there's stuff for fae, werewolves, things like that. That is recently released, and it is available on DriveThruRPG. Any other news, guys? It's kind of a slow week.
Yep.
Just like today, all that rain.
Yeah,
slowing it down.
I know, like, for Magic the Gathering, the new set is coming out, War of the Spark. The pre-release is next Saturday.
The Million D Planeswalker set.
Yeah, whatever. Dumb.
So how about monks?
Yes. So
Nice transition.
So let's talk about, as we have been doing the last few episodes, we take these classes, we kind of do a deep dive into it. We tell you what stats we think you should be focusing on for this class, the subclasses, which one we think is the best, and then we talk about different ways to roleplay a monk. Roleplay the class. In this case, we are talking about monks. So let's talk about monks. Monks, anybody know what edition monks were brought in?
Trying to think I think for sure 3.5.
I can't remember if they were in second or third.
I remember it being a big deal. They've never caught on as far as a class that belongs in a fantasy setting. From a standpoint of it is just much more, Asian influence versus, Arthurian legend. And so I know there was always kind of a pushback of them being around in the game, at least early on. You don't really see a lot of them in the writings until I think Salvatore picked up a monk in his Claire Quintet saga, and that was kind of the only really opportunity that you've seen much of one. Is he's a big fan of martial arts and that choreographed style of fighting, so he's really the only one that writes about him.
First edition.
Were they in first? Dang.
Like the original Dungeons and Dragons?
Yep.
Was it like from Karatur?
Supplement 2 from Blackmore is their first appearance.
Interesting.
And then it wasn't in second edition at all, and then it came back in third.
Gotcha.
Huh. I wasn't sure if it was something maybe they included with Oriental Adventures or...
That's just I take that back. So in second edition, they were called Mystics,
Interesting.
Okay.
and they were an alternate class. They weren't one of the standard classes.
So they are definitely more flavored towards a Shaolin style monk now. And I think that's fascinating. Anyway, let's talk about stats when it comes to monk. Nolan, what is, in your opinion, the primary stat for a monk and why?
I think part of it is going to be dexterity, just because dexterity is one of the best stats in the game, and they're one of the classes that use it the best. Getting unarmored defense right out of the gate, adding your dex and wisdom to your armor class, not needing the armor, being able to use dex for your attack stat, your initiative, your AC. I mean, it's just hard to say no to.
I would agree. Cody, would you agree with that?
I would agree with Nolan. Dexterity is pretty pivotal to a monk. I mean, the only other thing that I could see possibly even making a run for it would be wisdom, but I think dexterity is probably your place because it's going to be your primary AC stat. It's going to be your attack, which you do a lot of. So
you can definitely be a strength monk. It's just very difficult because they are so mad dependent. I mean, like you said, wisdom, if it's rivaling for first when everything we've talked about so far as con is almost overlooked always, now all of a sudden we're talking about 3 stats that we need to be pretty significant. It's really hard to find areas to spend to throw into strength. And if you're rolling, then you kind of, if you're rolling up characters, then you get a lot more freedom. But in a point buy, a standard array style thing, you're kind of limited. And there's a lot more races that get +2 to dex, 1 to wisdom, give you a little bit more opportunity to help yourself and your cause.
yeah, and I agree with your statement there. This is one of those classes that definitely has 3 stats that are more primary for you. It's a little harder to split this class than it is some of the other classes where you know there are those stats you can take, but it doesn't matter as much where this class has. It's a lot harder, like we'll talk about later with multi-classing with this one, because if you pull in another stat that you need that's pivotal, spreading over 4 stats is just getting crazy.
Yeah, gets more difficult. Has to be worth it.
Yeah.
So with that being the case, Cody, what would you say is our secondary stat then?
Well, I would say if we're taking dexterity as our primary, then I would go with wisdom as our secondary.
Yeah, and go a little bit into detail about what exactly wisdom does for a monk.
So we talked about unarmored defense. Unarmored defense, they get to add their wisdom modifier to their dexterity modifier to their base armor class. So they get a higher armor class out of the gate. The other thing is it affects their DCs for their saves with all of their fun attacks.
Stunning Fist.
Stunning Fist. Killer move.
Mm-hmm.
Killer move.
And of course, when it comes to their third primary stat, it has to be Constitution. Again, you need to be able to survive, and you need hit points to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And Constitution is key to that. I don't really think that there's much argument on that one.
Nope.
I think
Any other reason why Constitution should be rated pretty high?
living is a great reason.
Living is a great reason.
I would say that monks are one of those classes that even without plate mail can jump up to an extremely high armor class.
Oh, yeah.
And a high armor class, while you think it's a great cushion for you, we have seen in our games does not work out real well if you don't have a hit point pool behind it.
Oh yeah, when giants have a +14 to hit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing of only having a D8. They're not your standard fighter. I think the play style design them is a hit and run. They get the highest mobility of any class in the game. Super quick, have ability to disengage, step of the wind, that kind of stuff. So they very much are, pop in, hit a couple times, stun a couple things, and then get out and hopefully are not getting hit. Utilize that extra speed. And so I think they're designed around the hit and run tactic. So deciding to go toe to toe like you're a D10 plate class is gonna make you squished pretty quick.
Yeah, no kidding. What about our dump stat?
Charisma.
Unfortunately, I think that is it. And even from a role-playing standpoint of, while you were raised in a monastery, you were trained by monks or whatever, you don't socialize well, is a super easy out. I still think they're very athletic in base, and so it's really hard to just throw away strength because, again, whether you take that perception of, they're, breaking bricks and shit, I mean, it's not all about speed. There is some force behind it.
I could see intelligence possibly just because you could play I know things by learning them. I don't know things by studying in books. Like, I've been focused on myself and what I've been taught. I haven't learned a lot of. You could play that like I was born and raised in a monastery and I don't know nothing of this world other than my monastery. I could see you go that route with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you could just be a brawler as well. I mean, you could just be a really good fighter.
Yeah.
Agile, kick stuff.
I've been hit in the head way too many times.
Or that.
All right, so we have dexterity as our primary, wisdom as our secondary, constitution as our tertiary, and of course our dumb stat is charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are of course multiple subclasses that you can choose from when it comes to being a monk, but I think we all pretty much agree there is one subclass that kind of stands above the rest. Cody, what is that subclass?
I would say if you're talking about pure optimization, it is the open hand.
Okay. Why is that?
Just the abilities that they get through their through their progression and what they unlock, some of their stuff.
Well, I think just the rider of you're not going to play a monk and not flurry of blows.
Right.
I think that's just kind of like how often we heard, and I'll flurry, and
Right.
I'll flurry, and I'll flurry. And so the fact that they get 3 options on every flurry for free on something they were already going to do,
Right.
and most of them, I mean, if you're tripping a target or knocking something back or, knocking something prone, you're aiding your team. And so if you are that striker that comes in, sweeps the legs, dump them on the down, and then all of a sudden your great weapon fighter has, plus 10 to hit and advantage because they're on the ground, you are, your damage per round as far as a monk goes may be minimal compared to that, but you're the setup guy. You're throwing the alley-oops.
And it definitely leans towards that in and out thing. I run in, I do a couple of hits, I trip the guy, he goes to the ground, I get the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the great weapon fighter just hammers on him. So I would say that, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the open hand and what exactly you get. And I just want to touch on this quickly. So at 3rd level, you get the ability to manipulate your opponent's ki when you score a hit with Fury of Blows. And it's important to remember that it has to be a hit with Fury of Blows. You have a couple different options. You can either A, knock your opponent prone, like Nolan said. B, knock them back 15 feet, and I think both of you said that. Or C, and I really like this one, especially if it's like a caster, make it so they can't take reactions until the end of your next turn, which that could be very pivotal in a fight.
Well, I think monks are naturally designed to be mage slayers. Again, talking about stunning strike, talking about that take away reactions, take away the shields, take away, that kind of ability. Even, taking away counterspell and that kind of stuff is so key. So
at 6th level, you get wholeness of body. As an action, you can regain hit points equal to 3 times your monk level. There is nothing wrong with that. Single target healing. Anybody?
Yeah, and I think that's a variation of the warriors or fighters, not warriors.
Right.
But just scaled insanely, and some great flavor there. The ability to have such control over your body that you actually close your wounds.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Tranquility is the 11th level one, and that's basically giving you the benefit of the Sanctuary spell. I don't remember what Sanctuary does off the top of my head. Anybody remember?
You basically put yourself in a protective barrier, and then anything that tries to make a hostile action towards you has to make a saving throw, or it can't. It has to go to something else. So again, I think I would have to see the right moment, because you still can't do anything in it, but kind of in that moment of, I think the mindset of this one is it eventually becomes in harmony with the universe. And so all of a sudden having this moment of I'm here to talk, and somebody's super hostile, you're like, just calm down, we're here to talk. And so,
I mean, we've all seen those moments in kung fu movies where the hero wades through a crowd of enemies to get to the big bad boss. Like, that kind of thing can happen.
Can hit him.
Yeah.
And then 17th level, you get Quivering Palm. I wanted to talk a little bit about Quivering Palm because basically, reading through it, it allows you to create these vibrations in the body that, ultimately it's a delay kill. Which, if you're a fan of the show Into the Badlands, the bishops, is that what they call the guys who go out and hunt the dark ones? Can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
They do something very similar to that to Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
there's a series of strikes that they do that affect 5 different organs that ultimately is going to kill him. And if you read anything about Kung Fu, I know there was rumors that this was how Bruce Lee was killed, was through Dim Mak. I've been a practitioner of Kung Fu for many years. I've read a lot about Dim Mak. I don't think there's any 100% proof that it's real, but there's also not 100% proof that it's not real. So, but that's basically what this technique is here.
Mm-hmm. And one of the strongest, it's one of the last save or dies
Yeah.
in the game. I think there's like one more, but there's contingencies. This one here, just straight up, you fail, you die. So the fact that it's on a monk, a non-caster, again, another interesting flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Nolan, let's talk about Way of the Shadow.
So Way of the Shadow, again, I think it depends on what you're building your monk for. As far as stealth-based and movement goes, it is the stealthiest class in the game. I don't think anything can touch it. It's also one of the fastest classes in the game when it comes to mobility in shadows and darkness. And I feel like it was, Way of the Shadow is kind of their setup for a ninja. It just kind of lacks some of the damage opportunities, I feel like. But when we talk about multi-classing, I think it's one of the more natural ones to go with a rogue or assassin that actually gets better with even a couple d6 of sneak attack or flavor. So,
Sure.
The fact that they can start using their ki to create spells.
Yeah, wish they get a 3rd level.
And I think some of those bigger ones there, the darkness is handy. But again, going back to a Mage Slayer style with silence on themselves, when you use ki, it's not a spell. You can control the, battlefield. I don't know. They're just kind of set up to be, again, this scary kind of master of darkness, and they do a good job with it, being able to create your own darkness, move stealthily, eventually being able to teleport from shadow to shadow. We've seen that used and abused greatly in our games, and it's Nightcrawler. I mean, it's just a broken ability.
Yeah. And they get that ability at 6th level.
Mm-hmm.
And at 11th level, they gain Cloak of the Shadows, which allows you to use your action to become invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And at 17th level, you gain Opportunist. I'm not sure what that one does.
I don't remember either.
I don't know either.
It's been a moment. We haven't played that high.
No, I don't think we've seen a monk that high.
No. I think Shin's our closest one.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 10th.
Is that where he's at?
10 or 11, yeah.
10 or 11.
Yeah.
Where we finished. And I think, again, for it being one of the stealthiest classes in the games, it felt almost insulting as a rogue, because, that was kind of their role, and they gave it to somebody else. And that's why I think it's a very good one for multi-classing. Even 6 levels, and then the rest rogue is a better sneaky guy. I mean, it's a ninja.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to play one. And instead of calling yourself a multi-class, just call yourself a ninja and combine the two.
Yeah.
So the 3rd subclass that we thought was really good for monk is the Kensai monk. The Kensai monk is your weapon-focused monk. This is the monk who is going to be a master of multiple weapons before they're done. You're shaking your head over there.
No, I'm just smiling. This is the monk that breaks all monks. This is the monk that can do some...
Oh, they do quite a bit. So Kensai monk... you guys know this better than I do, so if you guys want to talk about this real quick before I go into what they get at the different levels.
Well, I think, the cool thing about the monk is you get the opportunity to bring what it means to you to the table, because it does mean different things. So, whether it's a Shaolin style martial artist, or it is that Ninja Scrolls, Ninja Assassin style, or for like me, Kensai is very much Hidden Tiger, Crouching Dragon, where it's not quite a samurai, and it's still kind of that, hand-to-hand combat, no armor. You're a big fan of Dragon Ball Z. We've got a Sun Soul monk. It has such an open interpretation of what you bring to the table, much like the fighter. So getting this one here, where it is a weapons master, for me, it was one of my more favorite as far as thematic ones, because I like the samurai sword idea. I like that style of weapon master, so graceful, and it's a dance. And so them picking up a couple ones also opens up opportunities to the long sword early on, being able to use it two-handed and give yourself a 1d10 instead of a 1d4 with your monk thing, really opens up early game damage, or even a couple of riders in there for longbows. And I think, what is it, The Last Samurai, we see some of them as their dedication to the archery style of things.
Yep.
It's almost overlooked in a lot of the stuff where they, we get ninja stars and stuff like that, but ancient, militaries were won by the bow, and getting that as a a Kensai shot is very cool. And then they get Way of the Brush calligraphy, so bringing in some of that old school Jet Li, Jackie Chan style, the pen and the brush strokes of calligraphy and all that. So very good thematic class.
I do enjoy that they actually have the ability to grab the spear there too, which is something I felt like was left out from the original monk as a monk weapon.
Yeah,
because you do see that in a lot of kung fu and or monk related things. There's
there is such a volume of weapons that could be repurposed in this game. So
and the what? Cody, you okay?
Finger fell asleep. We're good.
Okay. By the way, the martial arts that's focused on archery is called Kyudo. It is a Japanese style martial art, and the bow is massive. It's a very fascinating martial art. We talked about weapons and spears and such. I'd say if you want to watch a really cool spear fight, what was that one that you showed me yesterday, Nolan?
I got into the Dragon Prince, which is a cartoon on Netflix with my kids, and in season 2, the king's wife and sister are spear masters, and it's really well done for a kid show / adult art style. So,
and of course, there's always the Oberyn Martell versus the Mountain from Game of Thrones. It's a great spear fight. It's pretty graphic. If you're familiar with Game of Thrones, you'd understand why.
Yeah.
Just don't root for the good guy.
Believe there is a good spear fight in the first Drunken Master movie as well.
It's been a long time since I've watched that movie.
I believe as he's trying to get on the train, there is a pretty interesting spear fight that goes on.
Well, I think that, again, the agility and so much of that there, people don't have armor and not getting hit, and just the movement of it is chaotic, and the reach, and definitely should have been one to start with.
Yeah.
And I think Kensai Monk is interesting. We've talked about what kind of monk you're going to play. If you look at Chinese martial arts and you look at the different, especially in Shaolin, when it comes to Shaolin, it just depends on what region of China they're from, and that's where you see a lot of changes in the martial art itself. I know that traditional Shaolin weapons would be like a white waxwood spear, white waxwood staff, a kwando, horse-leg cutter, whip chains, rope darts. And the other thing to remember is that a lot of this stuff had practical uses. These were stuff like typical garden tools that they figured out a way to use as weapons. And it's really fascinating. There is a shovel, there is a there is a trident, things like that and when as you were training to be throughout your mastery of kung fu, you learned all these weapons. I know personally I've learned how to use sticks, I've learned how to use staffs, spears, swords. And these are all things that, as I was progressing through the system, that I had to learn as well. Now, I'm not going to say I'm an expert at them by any stretch of the imagination. I can do more than your average person can, but don't make me fight anybody who's got any real skill at it, because I'll be fucked. But I at least have a basic understanding of it. And Shaolin masters could basically pick up anything and fuck you up with it. So I do think it's interesting there. I do want to talk quickly about Way of the Drunken Master. When I was making my monk, I very much wanted to choose this type of monk. I wanted to be a Drunken Master. Now, I love Jackie Chan. I enjoy the Drunken Master film. I have spent some time studying some Drunken Master forms.
Both of them. There's 2.
Actually, I know there is, but I really enjoyed the first one the most.
Right.
I have spent time learning some drunken style kung fu forms, and just seeing the stepping and stuff like that, and understanding that it is all a feint it's really fascinating. And I think they've tried to do some neat stuff in there, like what was it? If there was an attack, if it hits you, you can divert it to somebody else. Things like that. They did a great job of doing stuff like that, but I just don't think it's super practical.
And I think a lot of it, just like anything that we've seen in here, some stuff with some good ideas and some good flavor, but not great uses of the mechanics, or just not that exciting of levels. You know, you get a few things of getting up from your feet from prone only causes part of your movement and stuff like that. Well, I mean, great, but while the other guys are doing, you know, chucking fireballs with radiant beams from the sky, or, you know, tripping people, knocking them prone, or doing other things like that, you're like, okay, so I have more movement. Well, you're a movement-based class. You already had, you know, 20 feet extra movement.
And I mean,
just
anybody,
really good at a kip up.
truthfully, anybody can get that with the feet.
And
So-
I think that was the big thing, is if
Yeah.
you wanted to build this style of character, you could do so very quickly through the other ones and be better for it,
Right.
just picking a different subclass.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, it was a class that I was really excited about because I did very much like Jackie Chan's movies. It just didn't live up to what I wanted it to be, and as a result, I'm going way of the open hand. So, let's talk multi-class options. Nolan, let's throw it over to you.
You know, I think on this one here, it's a very difficult one to multi-class. I think some of the subclasses make it a little bit easier. Again, if you're just jumping into Shadow for 6 levels so you can teleport from Shadow to Shadow and have Darkness on your rogue, you know, it makes more sense. I would highly recommend not going above maybe 3 levels in something else. And if I was going to pick something else, I would do something that gives you more damage based upon attacks. Since you do get Flurry, you get up to 4 hits. You know, stuff like Hex or Hunter's Mark, you know, from a Ranger or a Warlock, just add to the damage that you're able to put out. I did a Gloomstalker 3 because adding Wisdom onto my Kensai Monk for initiative plus Dex meant I was going first. I liked the guy that was ready for action before it even started. Hunter's Mark was great, and some of the Ranger stuff I thought was thematic too, of the good berries and self-sustain, and I like survival and skills. It just worked as a natural one. I don't think I would go past 3 on it. It just was the perfect cutoff. Anything that has Dex or Wisdom as a base stat, I think would be a good one. I'd love to see a War Cleric 1 picking up Divine Favor, so all your punches do an extra 1d4 radiant, so you're doing kind of the Sacred Fist style combat just for some extra damage. Just good flavor, good fun, and you don't give up too much because the 20th level capstone for Monk is not anything to write home about. So I think there are some good options out there.
Cody?
Oh, I would pretty much agree with Nolan on all fronts there. It's we've talked about it a little earlier. It's a hard one to multi-class, being that you have kind of 3 sets you're going to be heavy on, at least 2 for sure that are primary, and then you don't have a real great spread that way. I would say lean towards classes that you are already going to be using. If you're spread off into, if you attempt to do a wizard with your monk, you're going to have issues. It's just too much spread on
Starts to get
stats.
difficult.
Yeah. I think Nolan hit on some good points. Shadow Monk and Rogue is a beautiful combo, and I could see that working well. I think, Ranger for Hunter's Mark, also another great way to go. But probably a short dip, like you said, with Gloomstalker would be probably the go-to one. I don't know when they get their... When do they get their fancy You Can't See Me?
That's at 3.
Is it at 3? So perfect. Yeah, that even plays into that more. I can see a Gloomstalker Shadow Monk even that way, where you can't fucking see me.
A Hunter, yeah.
Excuse me.
Well,
Well, again,
I
I'm
think
just not here, period.
I think many of those classes too can play into being, again, I feel like it's the best Mage Slayer. They get evasion, they get stillness of mind, they eventually get proficiency in all saving throws. And then their magic isn't magic, it's keys, so therefore, anti-magic zones and stuff like that don't affect them. One of the ones that I came up with, Patrick makes fun of me of saying that you can multi-class anything with Warlock, and he kind of mentioned that to me. So how do you do a Monk and a Warlock? So,
Which is, I have that listed here.
give me a hard time about it. I have an idea of a Warlock 2 for the purpose of getting Devil's Sight, so you can see magical darkness. Shadow Monk, you create your own darkness, you teleport to it, and then you're in the shadows with the wizard or the cleric or whoever, and you're just your perfect sight through it, no issues. You get somebody that has true sight or whatever, you've got silence to back it up, and then the whole idea of the Warlock side of it, you made a deal with them that the only thing that's keeping, this great old one in check is magic. So you're just out there destroying all the magic in the world, and you just hate magic. And you pretend to be a guy that's completely fast. Oh, a scroll, really cool, awesome. And then when everybody's asleep, you're like throwing all the magical spell books in the fire. So like fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. My guy's going to get free. And you're just this lawful evil guy that's just like, yeah, I sold my soul to a banished. He hates magic for whatever reason, whether a fireball got dropped on his inn or whatever, and his wife was killed or whatever. And he's like, you know what, screw magic. Too much power in the mortals' hands or whatever. It should be up to the gods, not us people. And so he hates it. And so 2 levels, Devil Sight, probably one of the best abilities in the game. Gives yourself a little bit of a range thing. Downside is you got to have 13 charisma. But if you're going to be a liar and try and swindle your group out of, I just love magic, it's so cool, give me your stuff, roll a persuasion check. So you're going to need it.
Absolutely.
Good character, though.
Yeah, that's good. Leave it to Nolan.
The Mage Slayer.
Shocker.
So let's talk role-playing tips. Nolan, this is something you and I have talked quite a bit about as I'm trying to figure out the background for my monk. I really like the concept that you came up with of where do you come from, knowing your temple, and how that is going to help you define your monk. And let's just throw that out to both of you. And
Well, I think when you were talking about it, of one of those things of, well, he doesn't know where his parents were, he doesn't know who, he was dropped off, he was a child of the thing or whatever. It's like your character is probably going to have zero personality. I mean, you were, it's almost like military. You've been broken down and trained in this way. So less of your character story is your temple. And there's a fun movie by the Matrix makers, Ninja Assassins, and it is a story of a old monk or an old assassin clan that's still working and hidden in the mountains, that steals children and trains them to be political assassins. And you are a product of your temple. You had mentioned, he has no family now except for, his Sifus, and then his brothers and his sisters. And, his long lost brother shows him, I don't know you. You're not my brother. You didn't go to my temple. And it really is that, not necessarily brainwashing, but training, or brainwashing, however, depending on if you're good guys or bad guys. No, but I think that dawned on me of then you need to create a monastery, because what's important to them is important to you. And your ideals are their ideals. How long has it been around? What is their culture? Is it good, bad, indifferent? Why did you leave? What is it? Is that part of their thing? They train enough people to go out, and then are you a missionary? Are you the Mormon knocking on doors of, have you heard the word of Silverbridge? Or are you just out seeing the world of, the world is really messed up. We hate everything about it. This is why we train you to be this way. Go out and see for yourself, and then come back and train the next generation or whatever. I mean, I think that's going to be key for you on your journey on this monk, is
I would agree.
how you interpret the world is based upon your training of what it is. Now, again, if that's your style, they do call it a monasteric tradition. It does seem to play a big role in almost all monks' lifestyles of how they were trained, just because it's not something that you find in a book. I've never seen anything that says, you pick up this monk wizard, you find wizard scrolls and you find spell books, and anybody can learn magic, and there's universities, and this stuff is usually hidden in temples or mountains, and it's a little rarer. And so I don't know, it'll be fun to see what you come up with for that.
I think that's great, a touch point. And shockingly enough, hats off to Wizards, as they did something about that. I don't know if you've looked at the Xanathars book yet or all, but there is actually a breakdown to help develop your monastery.
I will be taking a look at that.
Yeah, there's some small dice rolling charts and stuff like that to do that. So
talk about your master, talk about what you came from. It's really cool.
Yeah, I was really proud of them for that. When I saw that, I was like, well, that makes sense, because yes, for this class, Nolan's correct. That's very pivotal. It's almost your whole being, probably. For yours, even more.
Yeah.
Being that, yeah.
So for me, as I'm getting prepared to play this monk and wanting to dive into it, I think for me what's going to help the most is knowing how my character fights. Knowing, is he a Northern Shaolin style? Is he Southern Shaolin style? Hungar, Wushu, whatever. Or is he a 5 animals type? And for me, it's going to have to be a very Kung Fu style monk. Because
he's going to be drunken style. It's just going to be...
It's not. I've completely washed that away now.
Oh, have you?
Yep, he's sober. He went through AA. It's all good.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm definitely changing that. And I think ways that you can, if you want to embrace the Kung Fu style, I would say spend some time watching a lot of Jet Li's older stuff, especially when he was portraying Ip Man.
So good.
Well, and if you go back, and I cannot remember the name of the movies. There's 3 of them. It might be Once Upon a Time in China. I don't remember. But there's gosh, I cannot remember the name of the character. There is a character, and for some reason the name is slipping my mind. It's not Ip Man, because Ip Man is in Wing Chun. There is a Hungar character, Hungar-style kung fu character that Jet Li portrays. Hungar-style kung fu is very rooted in the earth. In fact, the Earth Movers or the Earth Shapers from Avatar are based on Hungar kung fu. And
Avatar: The Last Airbender. No.
yeah,
Not the blue people.
Not the blue people.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. Sorry. It's good side note. That's another one you can watch. Is each of the benders is all based on a traditional style of kung fu. So that is something, again, you can watch that and get some great ideas on how to do it. And be descriptive about your fighting. Talk about, like, if you are going to use the 5 animals system, mention that you're crane striking, you're, using your tiger claws, using your lever palms, things like that. Be descriptive, because and I would say this for anything, any type of fighter or any action that you take, when you describe your actions in a fight, it makes the fight that much more visual in your own mind as well as the other players at your table, and ideally it would prompt them to do it as well. And it's one thing to say, I shoot my bow, or another thing to say, she takes a deep breath as she draws a bead on this character and lets loose an arrow. So I would say with anything that you're going to do, be descriptive. But with Monk, you have the ability to really look at some of the styles of Kung Fu or any martial art that you decide that you want to focus this on, because it could be a Bushido style, or it could be a Shintao monk. It could be all sorts of different types of monks that there are in the world that you could base this on. You could create a whole fighting style off of yoga if you wanted to. I downward dog his face.
Oh, that was a bit much.
So I would say if you're going to role play a monk, take the time to do a little bit of research. Spend some time on YouTube and just watch things here and there to see different styles. It could benefit you greatly, and be descriptive as all hell.
And one thing I would say too is talk with your DM. Be like, hey, I want to be descriptive with my combat, and is it cool with you if I say I'm going to attack, I roll my attack rolls, and then I tell you how I'm going to attack? Because that can help you shape your combat. It's hard to say, I'm going to do this, and then into this, and then you roll 3 misses and a hit, and you're just like, oh shit, this doesn't. So, make it work for you. Like, it shouldn't be the end of the world if you roll your attacks together before you tell them how you're attacking. Just say, I'm attacking. Roll your attack rolls. I have these 3 hits, and then say, this is what I do. I guarantee you almost all DMs will be super happy with that. Sure. Because explaining to you how you hit every time and making it different is a monotonous nightmare. Absolutely. Sometimes. Because you want them to be involved and you want them to feel like they're doing things.
And you want them to visualize
But there's only so many times you could go, you swing your sword and it takes a chunk out of them. Yeah. Because you're just like, I can only do so much here. You got to give me a little back.
and if, again, we talked about it quickly, if you want a modern, if you don't like old style kung fu, you don't like the horrible lip syncing or the horrible dubbing that they do on those, I think it's funny as hell. You can always watch Into the Badlands. Mm-hmm. They do a fantastic job of doing some amazing martial arts. Daniel Wu is incredible.
Yeah.
So...
lots and lots of monk options.
Yeah, because you could easily say that Sunny is a Kensei monk.
He's super badass at Itmon too, because he did Itmon for a while too.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah,
I like Diablo's monk is very well done too as well, and from an RP standpoint, trying to figure out what's important to your monk, whether it is I don't know. They almost, in my mind, come across matter-of-factly. Like, my training is my way. And in old editions, they were always lawful. And it wasn't law of the land. It was law of the monastery or law of the code. This is how I live my life. You're talking to a samurai about Bushido and stuff like that. It's nice what you think, but you're wrong. And that's okay. Let me educate you real quick, And it's like, it's fine. You misunderstand. And it's just very like, oh, wow. It's very blunt and abrupt, and it is what it is. And maybe that is why you have a low charisma of like, well, I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm just telling you how it is. And you're just like, no, you're kind of mature.
I appreciate how you feel, Nolan, but that is not correct.
Yeah.
The correct way is the way of Silverbeard, and let me tell you about Silverbeard.
Exactly.
Let's talk about Silverbeard.
All right, guys. Well, anything else about Monk? Because I feel like we actually went pretty deep on this one.
Yeah,
no,
did good.
I think, again, it's a fun class. And from a standpoint of big numbers and stuff like that, I don't think that it's going to get up there with, great weapon masters and sharpshooters just because those feats are so good. But for your abilities to do the small things, hits, runs, stuns, sweeping the legs, eventually running across water, running up walls. I mean, you're really only limited by your imagination. I think role play style, is going to be interesting to see what people come up with. And again, your flavor comes in the non-combat things.
And there's
this one here.
There's a couple of fun things we didn't mention because all monks get them. Deflect missiles.
Deflect missiles
is a
safe fall.
Beautiful thing. Just very role play heavy, where it's like, oh, I get an arrow shot at me, and I catch it out of the air and throw it back.
Do that?
Yeah.
There was a guy who was a principal at one of the high schools in Fairbanks that he was, I forget how high his rank was, but every once in a while he put on these demonstrations where people would shoot a bow and arrow at him, and he would either deflect or just straight up catch the arrow.
Crazy.
Well, and the crazy thing is when you think of a short bow, and depending on your monk level, I catch the arrow and throw it back harder than you shot it at me.
I do more damage than you could have done.
Yeah, exactly.
With your own ammo.
I think the one thing I will touch on real quick, though, is you are the first class to get 3 attacks early. Like, you have all of the attacks. That is one thing that everybody will look at you as an early monk and be like, holy crap, Yeah. And while you don't get the sharpshooter or, the great weapon master, early on you have that slight advantage with your, damage modifier at the end because you're getting the 3 attacks at the beginning. Well, 2 and then 3.
Well, and just the fact that, what is it, key at every level?
Yep. And it comes back on a short rest.
Yeah. Which is, I think, absolutely pivotal.
Yep.
Yeah, use your abilities.
Beautiful class.
You get lots of stuff.
It is. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I very much so enjoyed mine. And I have enjoyed it every time I've played one. It's just one of those classes for me.
I will probably be, as I tend to always do, a little over the top.
No,
not me.
You should be like the solemn, quiet person and just blow everybody's mind.
Oh, it's not that. I'm just talking about like in combat.
No, I know. I just like you just sit there. I punch him in the throat.
Yeah, I punch him. I do think I like the idea of this character not being socially quite right, so he may say things that other people would maybe reserve. He may do things like sitting down to eat dinner and scooping rice up into his mouth. I'm sorry, I'm just being horribly stereotypical, but like taking his hand to cup his soup into his mouth, things like that. And not using silverware and just wiping his hands off on his shirt. And
oh my God, I can't wait for you and Belray to get together. It's going to be beautiful. She's going to be like, are you disrespecting my food?
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So that is Monk class. So before we sign off real quick, because I know we did talk about my character last week, and at the end of the show, Nolan actually grabbed the dice and rolled up a character of his own. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's like 88% done.
Which means it may change.
Which means it's not done at all.
Never 100%.
You were going to tell me you're going to walk in with a tiefling, and then Sunday it's going to be a Goliath.
Well, no, and I think early it started as just a humanoid. I like the guy in the stone tower with the markings or whatever. After having some good conversations with Zach, the whole idea was I was like, well, because originally I was thinking about Warlock 2, Abjuration Wizard 18, and I was like, okay, so he'd be locked in there. Maybe he was put into sleep or whatever, and he's locked in with this, whatever this Warlock thing is, and away you go. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, Zach says, well, you got to play something different. You can't play a human or a half-elf. Those are off the table. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, okay, fine. Apparently 8 half-elves is enough. So I was looking at the Air Genasi or whatever they are. And he's like, well, aren't they stereotypically like chaotically evil? He goes, so what if you're a bad person and you were locked away with a good thing, or whatever, and like, and it's like, okay. So, now we're kind of like on more of like a cleric wizard style class. And then the more I looked at the Air Genasi, their stats are just atrocious. I mean, I just, it's one thing to not min-max a character. It's a whole nother thing to just, they're not even the best Genasi. And yeah, it just wasn't very good. Like, no flavor. You can hold your breath indefinitely. I mean, that was it. They don't even learn their own like wind cantrip, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty disappointing. So that kind of was off the table. And as we started looking at more things, I was like, the cool thing about sorcerer is they get 4 or 5 cantrips. And I said, the only cantrips I really want are shape water, mold earth, gust, and control flames. Like, in my mind, that my wizard, wizards are elementalists.
One of each element.
Yeah, and so now it's like, oh crap, I'm making Avatar: The Last Airbender. But no, it's one of those things of, I like him as the master of elements. I was like, that's a cool thing about the sorcerers. He goes, well, you could do a storm sorcerer. And they get the 10 feet movement or whatever. And then they also learn the primordial language and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so now I don't have to be an Air Genasi. So then I was like, well, let's take a look out there. And I was like, well, we could take a look at a tiefling. And I was reading about like feral tieflings, and they're not always red. And because every time I see a tiefling, I think of Hellboy. Right. And once I get the mental image in my head, it's like, I'm not playing Hellboy. Like, get out of here. And so I was looking at blue ones, and all of a sudden I'm looking at pictures of Draenei or Draenei or whatever they are. Draenei. And Kunari from Dragon Age. And I'm like, oh, okay, these are some cool ideas. So it kind of goes in a Lightborn Draenei, whatever, has the markings on his body locked in with it or whatever. It's like, okay, he could be a gray tiefling. Screw being like slender like a devil or whatever. Just have him be like 6'5", 300 pounds. And like in my mind, the stereotypical wizard is the white beard or whatever. I was like, dude, you're a fucking wizard, man. Like, he just disguises himself and walks around town as Gandalf, basically, of what he thinks a wizard should look like. And then he's very sort of like, don't get too excited here, friend. I'm going to show you what I am. You seem like understanding people, and all of a sudden, like, here's this thing sitting on. I'm sorry for lying to you, It's like, so holy shit, that's a huge dude. Yeah, no, I'm just a wizard, man. But anyway, so that's kind of where it's at. I don't know if it's a sorcerer wizard or a cleric wizard or
blue tiefling. I bet you got a lot of pictures of a female blue tiefling with a lollipop.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was looking at tiefling art, and then all of a sudden, she was like, "Oh, when did they get blue?" And Molly Mock and all them were. I was like, "Oh wow, they really went deep with it." So, yeah, there's some really good pictures of some gray.
Jester's a blue tiefling, right?
Yeah. Yep, Jester, and then the Blood Hunter was as well. So, no, I was like, okay, maybe playing a tiefling that's not at all, being in a tower. I don't know the story of, eventually it'd be one of those things of like maybe the tower's sealed away, and then it's just as simple of like it was a library locked away or whatever, and that's kind of where he does his studying, and then he eventually just molded earth the door out and walks outside or whatever. It's some few things there. How long he's been out? Would he understand what he is? Does he think that he was eventually locked in there with this evil and let it out, and then go back and figure out that he was actually locked in there with this good and it's a part of him? And then his obviously infernal family had something to do with the fact that he is what he is, stick with that whole thing. So there's some really fun feats that tieflings get as well. The Infernal Constitution, getting resistance to cold and poison, is really cool. 6 levels of Storm Sorcerer gives you resistance to thunder and lightning. So you'd have thunder, lightning, cold, poison, fire. And I was like, that's some kind of fun stuff, having some resistances there. So I don't know. I think it is probably just one level of something in the rest wizard, looking at Evoker. But yeah, I think I've got like I said, 88%. I think I got a general idea. I just don't have a story of why he's there, who he's there, how he got out, when did he meet people, how long has he been out.
Still tattoos on the skin, right?
Yeah.
Giant tiefling with tattoos all over him.
Having the markings and stuff like that. And whether that's like the rituals he casts or whatever. I just imagine a guy just like wrapping his hands around it. What are you doing? I'm casting an alarm or whatever, So just marking a spell book basically on his body.
What are you doing? I'm making sure we're not interrupted.
Yeah. Do it. Just casting spells, having huge tattoos. So, yeah, whether he's a giant tiefling or he's just a skinny one. I mean, there's some cool art with them tieflings, but anyway, yeah, I think feral tiefling, they get good stats, and more importantly, their Xanathar feats are actually really impressive. Flames of Finagos or something like that, you get to reroll 1s on fire damage, which is pretty good for fireballs.
Yeah.
So being able to do some of that stuff, they just got some really good flavorful feats. So
All right. Well, that is our show for this week.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, we'd like to let people know how they can find us. Nolan, how can they contact you if they'd like to?
I am on Twitter at nlamers, NLAMERES, and apparently I have an Instagram page that I'm working on trying to learn how to use. And then also on Gmail at nlamers@gmail.com.
And Cody?
You can always drop me a Twitter at AlphaLCD, or I also have a Gmail. It's alphalcd@gmail.com.
And of course, you can find me at pretty much any social media outlet at the Forge Herald. And if you'd like, you can always check out all three of us on any of our other actual play podcasts where we play Dungeons and Dragons as well as Vampire the Masquerade. You can find those on our SoundCloud page. If you are a podcast and you'd like to contact us to be a potential guest on your show, you know how to get a hold of us. Anything else, guys?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.